November 2010, Morenci, Michigan. A father hands over his 3 young sons to a woman who doesn't exist, then tells police they'll never find the boys. 14 years later, he sits in prison, smiling when asked where they are, still refusing to tell the truth. What did John Skelton do to Andrew, Alexander, and Tanner during those final hours before they vanished forever? Morenci sits in the far southeast corner of Michigan, so close to the Ohio border that you can see it from the town square. Only 2,200 people live there. Everyone knows everyone. The kind of place where doors stay unlocked and kids ride bikes until dark. West Chicago Boulevard runs through the middle of town, lined with small houses painted white and yellow and blue. In one of those yellow houses, 3 boys lived with their father every other weekend. Their names were Andrew, Alexander, and Tanner Skelton. They were 9 years old, 7 years old, and 5 years old. On Friday afternoon, November 26, 2010, their mother came to pick them up. The door was unlocked. The house was empty. The boys were gone. This is the story of 3 brothers who disappeared on Thanksgiving weekend. This is the story of a father who says he saved them by giving them away. This is the story of a mystery that has no bodies, no witnesses, and no answers. Just 3 empty beds and a man in prison who knows exactly what happened, but will not say. Tanya Zuvers pulled into the driveway at 2:47 in the afternoon. She was supposed to get her sons back at 1 o'clock, but John, her ex-husband, had not answered his phone all day. She had called 6 times. The November air was cold and gray. Dead leaves covered the yard. She walked up to the front door and tried the handle. It opened. She called their names. Andrew, Alexander, Tanner. No one answered. She walked through the living room. Toys were scattered on the floor. A half-finished puzzle sat on the coffee table. She checked the kitchen. Dishes in the sink. She went upstairs. The boys' bedroom was messy, like always. Clothes on the floor. Beds unmade. But no boys. She called John's phone again. No answer. She called the police. When the officers arrived, they searched the house top to bottom. They found nothing unusual, no signs of a struggle, no blood, no note, just an empty house that smelled like old coffee and unwashed laundry. They asked Tanya when she had last seen the boys. Wednesday, she said. 2 days ago. John had picked them up for his court-ordered visitation time. It was Thanksgiving week. The boys were supposed to spend Thursday and Friday with their father, then come home. They asked her about John. Was he violent? Had he ever threatened to take the boys? She shook her head. He loved those boys more than anything. He taught Sunday school. He coached their soccer team. He would never hurt them. But the divorce had been hard. They had been fighting about custody for months. John wanted more time with the boys. He said Tanya was not a good mother. She said he was controlling and unstable. The court had ordered the boys to live mostly with Tanya. John had been angry about it. The police put out a missing persons alert. 3 boys, ages 9, 7, and 5. Last seen at their father's house on West Chicago Boulevard in Morenci, Michigan. They sent officers to look for John Skelton's vehicle, a silver minivan. They checked gas stations and rest stops. They called his family, his phone. By evening, they found him. He was at a hospital in Sandusky, Ohio, 70 miles away. He had tried to hang himself with a t-shirt. He was alive, but barely conscious. When he could finally talk, the police asked him one question. "Where are your sons?" John Skelton looked at them with red eyes. He said the boys were safe. He said he had given them to people who would protect them. He said their names were Joanne Taylor and her organization. He said he had met them at a rest stop in Holiday City, Ohio, early that morning, around 8:45. He handed the boys over to Joanne. She was part of a group that helped fathers save their children from bad mothers. The boys were going to live somewhere safe now, somewhere Tanya could never find them. He said he did it because he loved them. He said he had no choice. The police asked him for proof, a phone number, an address, a last name for Joanne Taylor. He could not give them one. He said the organization worked in secret. He said they moved children to places where abusive parents could not reach them. He said Joanne had promised the boys would be happy. The police asked him to describe her. He gave a vague description: brown hair, average height, maybe 40 years old. They asked where the organization was based. He did not know. They asked how he found them. He said a friend told him about them months ago. Which friend? He would not say. They asked if he had any paperwork, any proof that this organization existed. He said no. It was all done on trust. The police did not believe him. They checked every database for Joanne Taylor. Hundreds of women had that name in the United States, but none of them matched his description. None of them were connected to any child protection organization. They pulled surveillance footage from the rest stop in Holiday City. The cameras showed John's minivan pulling in at 9:17 in the morning, not 8:45, like he said. The footage showed John getting out of the van alone. No boys, no woman. He walked to the restroom, stayed for 4 minutes, then drove away. The boys were not with him. The police brought cadaver dogs to search John's house and his minivan. The dogs alerted inside the van. They smelled something: death, decomposition. But there were no bodies, just a trace, a hint, a ghost of what might have been there. The police searched the house again. They tore apart the basement. They dug up the backyard. They checked every closet, every crawl space, every corner. Nothing. They asked John again, "Where are the boys?" He said the same thing. With Joanne Taylor, safe, protected, away from their mother. John failed a polygraph test. The examiner said he was lying about almost everything. The police pressed harder. They told him the story did not make sense. They told him the surveillance footage proved he was alone. They told him there was no Joanne Taylor. John changed his story. He said maybe it was not a rest stop. Maybe it was a parking lot. Maybe Joanne's name was spelled differently. Maybe he got the time wrong. Maybe he got the place wrong. But the boys were still safe. He was sure of that. The police asked him why he tried to kill himself if the boys were safe. He said he was scared. Scared of what Tanya would do when she found out. Scared of going to jail. Scared of losing his sons forever. Then, just before they took him back to his cell, John Skelton said something that made every officer in the room go quiet. He looked at the detective across the table and said, "You will never find those boys. Not the way you are looking." The detective asked what he meant. John smiled, a small, tired smile. He said nothing else. 3 boys had vanished into nothing. 9 years old, 7 years old, 5 years old. Andrew with his gap-toothed grin. Alexander with his freckles. Tanner with his blonde hair that stuck up in the back. Gone. Their father said he gave them to strangers who do not exist. The surveillance cameras said he was alone. The cadaver dog said they smelled death. And somewhere, in the cold Michigan winter, 3 empty beds waited for boys who would never come home. The official story said John Skelton gave his sons to an underground organization. But that story broke apart the moment anyone looked closely. So, what really happened in that yellow house on West Chicago Boulevard? What happened in the hours between Thursday afternoon, when a neighbor saw the boys playing in the yard, and Friday morning when John drove to Ohio alone? And why would a father who said he loved his sons more than anything refuse to tell the truth about where they were? The investigation started in the dirt. Police brought search teams to Morenci on November 27th, the day after the boys were reported missing. They walked in lines across fields behind John Skelton's house. 70 volunteers spread out across 600 acres of farmland and forest. They walked 5 feet apart, looking at the ground, calling the boys' names into the cold air. Andrew, Alexander, Tanner. The temperature was 34 degrees. The sky was flat and gray. Their breath came out in clouds. They found nothing that first day. No clothing, no toys, no footprints, nothing. The timeline became the most important piece of the puzzle. Police built it hour by hour, using witnesses and phone records and security cameras. On Wednesday, November 24th, John picked up the boys from Tanya's house at 4 in the afternoon. The boys were excited. It was Thanksgiving week. John had promised to make turkey and let them stay up late to watch movies. So a neighbor saw them arrive at John's house at 4:30. The boys ran into the yard and played with a football until dark. On Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, another neighbor saw John and the boys leave the house around 10 in the morning. They came back at 2 in the afternoon. John was carrying grocery bags. The boys looked happy. On Friday morning, November 26th, at 7:30, John called Tanya. He told her the boys were fine and she could pick them up at 1 o'clock like planned. His voice sounded normal, calm. But when Tanya arrived at 2:47, the house was empty. That left a window. Somewhere between Thursday at 2 in the afternoon and Friday at 7:30 in the morning, something happened. 17 and a half hours. The police needed to know what John did during that time. They pulled his cell phone records. His phone pinged off towers in Morenci until 11 at night on Thursday. Then it went dark for 4 hours. At 3 in the morning on Friday, his phone pinged off a tower near Holiday City, Ohio. He stayed in that area until 6 in the morning, then drove back to Morenci. The phone records matched the surveillance footage from the rest stop. John was in Ohio early Friday morning, but the cameras showed he was alone. The police interviewed everyone who knew John Skelton. His family said he was a good father, quiet, religious, a little strange maybe, but harmless. He read the Bible every night. He prayed before meals. He took the boys to church every Sunday when he had them. He worked at a shipping company, driving forklifts and loading trucks. He had worked there for 8 years. His boss said John was dependable, never missed a day. I never caused trouble. But in the months before the boys disappeared, John had changed. He seemed distracted, angry. He talked about the custody battle constantly. He said the court system was broken. He said mothers always won and fathers always lost. He said Tanya was poisoning the boys against him. He said he would do anything to protect his sons. The police asked Tanya about the custody fight. She said it had been going on for 2 years, ever since she filed for divorce. John did not want to split up. When she left anyway, he fought for full custody. He told the court that Tanya was neglectful, that she left the boys alone, that she brought strange men around them. None of it was true, Tanya said. The court had investigated and found no evidence of abuse or neglect. The judge gave Tanya primary custody, and John got the boys every other weekend. John had been furious. He filed appeal after appeal. He sent Tanya angry emails. He told her she was destroying their family. In one email from October, John wrote that he would rather see the boys dead than raised by her. Tanya had shown that email to her lawyer, but the court did not change the custody arrangement. John was allowed to keep his visitation rights. The physical evidence was thin. The cadaver dogs had alerted in John's minivan, but searchers found no bodies. Forensic teams went over the van inch by inch. They found a small stain on the carpet in the back. Tests showed it was blood, type O positive, the same blood type as Andrew and Alexander. But the stain was old, maybe weeks old, and the amount was tiny, less than a teaspoon, not enough to indicate serious harm. Children got bloody noses. They scraped their knees. The blood could have come from anything. Still, it was something. The police noted it in their reports. They searched John's house again on November 28th. This time, they brought luminol, a chemical that makes blood glow under black light even after it has been cleaned. They sprayed every room. The chemical found nothing. No blood in the bedrooms. No blood in the bathroom. No blood in the kitchen or the basement. Either the boys had not been hurt in the house, or John had cleaned so well that not even luminol could find traces. The police checked the washing machine. Empty. They checked the trash cans, bags of normal garbage, food wrappers, junk mail, nothing suspicious. On December 1st, the FBI joined the search. They brought more dogs, more equipment, more people. They expanded the search area to over 2,000 acres. They checked abandoned barns and old wells. They dragged the bottom of a pond 3 miles from John's house. They searched a landfill in Toledo, Ohio, thinking maybe John had dumped the bodies there during his drive. Teams spent 5 days sorting through garbage, looking for any sign of the boys. They found nothing. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children put out alerts across the country. Posters went up in 48 states. Andrew, Alexander, and Tanner's faces appeared on billboards and milk cartons. Tips came in from everywhere. Someone thought they saw the boys at a McDonald's in Florida. Someone else saw them at a gas station in California. Every tip was checked. Everyone led nowhere. In January, John Skelton was charged with 3 counts of unlawful imprisonment. Not murder, not kidnapping, just unlawful imprisonment. Because the prosecutors could not prove the boys were dead without bodies. John's lawyer argued that his client had suffered a mental breakdown. John had been under enormous stress from the divorce and custody battle. He had made a terrible decision, giving his sons to people he thought would help. But he truly believed the boys were safe. He was not a killer. He was a desperate father who had made a horrible mistake. The prosecution argued the opposite. They said John murdered his sons in a twisted act of revenge against his ex-wife. He could not have the boys, so he made sure Tanya could not have them either. The jury would have to decide. Before the trial, police got a break. A woman came forward in February. She said she had been friends with John years ago. She said John had talked about taking the boys away where Tanya could never find them. This was back in September, 2 months before the disappearance. John had asked the woman if she knew anyone who could help hide children. People who worked off the books. People who did not ask questions. The woman said she thought he was joking. She never reported it. Now she felt sick about it. The police asked her to testify. She agreed. In September of 2011, John Skelton went to trial. The courtroom was packed. Tanya sat in the front row, crying quietly. John sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, staring straight ahead. The prosecution presented the timeline, the phone records, the surveillance footage, the cadaver dog alerts. And they brought the woman who said John had asked about hiding children. They showed the angry emails John had sent to Tanya. They argued that John killed the boys sometime Thursday night or early Friday morning, disposed of their bodies somewhere between Morenci and Holiday City, then invented the story about Joanne Taylor to cover his tracks. The defense argued there was no proof the boys were dead, no bodies, no murder weapon, no witnesses, just circumstantial evidence and speculation. John maintained his story. The boys were alive. They were safe. He had given them to people who cared. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They found John Skelton guilty on all 3 counts of unlawful imprisonment. The judge sentenced him to 10 to 15 years in prison. At the sentencing, Tanya stood and spoke. She looked at John and asked him one question. "Where are my babies?" John looked back at her. He said nothing. The judge banged his gavel. John was led away in handcuffs. He never looked back, but the case did not end there. In March of 2013, a prisoner in the same facility as John came forward with a shocking claim. The prisoner said John had confessed to him. Late one night in their cell block, John had told him what really happened. According to the prisoner, John said he broke each boy's neck, one by one, then buried their bodies in concrete. He said he poured a foundation for a new barn on a farm near the Ohio border. The boys were underneath. The prisoner said John cried when he told the story. He said John kept saying he had no choice. It was the only way to save them from their mother. Police investigated immediately. They searched every farm within 50 miles of the border. They checked building permits for new construction in November. They brought ground radar to scan for concrete foundations. They found several new barns built that fall, but none of them showed any signs of bodies buried beneath. The prisoner's story could not be confirmed. Some investigators believed him. Others thought he was lying to get a reduced sentence on his own charges. John denied the whole thing. He said the prisoner made it up. The boys were still alive, he insisted. Still safe, still hidden. The search continued. Year after year, volunteers combed the woods every anniversary of the disappearance. Tanya organized vigils. She spoke to reporters. She kept the boys' case in the news. She refused to believe they were dead. She said a mother knows. A mother would feel it if her children were gone. She felt nothing, just emptiness, just waiting. Police followed up on hundreds of tips. None led anywhere. The boys seemed to have vanished into air, and John Skelton, locked behind bars, kept smiling that same small smile whenever anyone asked where they were. In the beginning, Morenci wanted to believe John's story. 3 boys given to people who would keep them safe. It was better than the alternative. Better than thinking about 3 small bodies hidden somewhere in the dark. The local newspaper ran stories with headlines asking if the boys could still be alive. Churches held prayer services. People hung yellow ribbons on trees along West Chicago Boulevard. But as months turned to years and no boys appeared, the hope curdled into something else. Doubt, then anger, then a kind of sick certainty that everyone had known the truth all along but had not wanted to face it. The shift happened slowly. In the first year, people defended John. He was one of them, a neighbor, a Sunday school teacher. He had sung in the church choir. How could someone like that kill his own children? But by the second year, the details had piled up too high to ignore. The surveillance footage showing John alone. The cadaver dog alerts. The confession from the prisoner, even if it could not be proven. The fact that John changed his story every time someone pressed him. The fact that no underground organization had ever come forward. The fact that 3 little boys had been erased from the world without a trace, and their father was the last person to see them alive. Tanya became the face of the case. She did interview after interview, begging for information. In 2012, she spoke to a reporter from the Detroit Free Press. She said, "I wake up every morning and I do not know if I should grieve or hope. I do not know if my boys are eating breakfast somewhere or if they are buried in the ground. John took everything from me, my children, my peace, my ability to move forward." The reporter asked if she believed the boys were alive. Tanya's voice broke. She said, "I have to believe it. Because if I stop believing, I have to accept that their father murdered them, and I will never even have bodies to bury. I cannot accept that. Not yet." But others had accepted it. Police made it clear in public statements that they believed the boys were deceased. In a press conference in March of 2014, the police chief said, "We have searched everywhere a body could be hidden within 100 miles of Morenci. We have followed every credible lead. We have interviewed hundreds of people. There is no evidence that Andrew, Alexander, and Tanner Skelton are alive. We believe John Skelton killed his sons and disposed of their remains in a location we have not yet discovered. We will not stop looking." He paused, then added, "But we need John to tell us the truth. He is the only one who knows where those boys are." John did not tell the truth. Instead, he gave interviews from prison that made things worse. In 2015, he spoke to a television reporter through a video call. The reporter asked him directly if he killed his sons. John shook his head. He said, "I saved my sons. I gave them a chance at a better life. People do not understand. Sometimes you have to do terrible things to protect the people you love." The reporter asked where the boys were now. John said, "They are where Tanya cannot reach them. That is all that matters." The reporter pressed, "Are they alive?" John smiled. That same small smile. He said, "Define alive." People who watched that interview felt their skin crawl. Define alive. What kind of father says that about his own children? Online forums exploded with theories. Some people thought John had given the boys to a religious cult. Others thought he had killed them during some kind of psychotic break and genuinely did not remember. A few still believed the boys were alive, hidden on a compound somewhere, raised by strangers. But most people believed the simplest explanation. And John Skelton murdered his 3 sons because he could not stand the idea of losing custody. He hid their bodies so well that no one would ever find them. And he invented the story about Joanne Taylor because he could not admit what he had done, even to himself. Attempts were made to discredit the investigation. John's family hired a private investigator in 2016. The investigator claimed police had tunnel vision. They decided John was guilty from day one and ignored other possibilities. What if Tanya was involved? What if she had hired someone to take the boys to frame John? What if there really was an organization, just not the one John described? The investigator produced no evidence for any of these theories. The police dismissed them as desperate attempts to create doubt. Tanya's lawyer called the accusations cruel and baseless. The private investigator stopped working on the case after 6 months. Meanwhile, strange things kept happening. In 2016, someone started leaving toys at the spot where the boys were last seen playing in the yard. 3 small toy trucks, red, blue, and green. They appeared on the anniversary of the disappearance, November 26th. No one saw who left them. Security cameras were installed after the first time, but the next year, the cameras caught only a dark figure in a hoodie approaching at 3 in the morning, setting down the trucks and walking away. The figure's face was hidden. Police reviewed the footage but could not identify the person. When reporters asked John if he knew who was leaving the toys, he said, "Maybe someone who knows the truth." In 2017, John came up for his first parole hearing. Tanya attended. She sat in the hearing room and stared at him while the parole board asked questions. They asked John if he felt remorse for what he did. He said yes. He felt terrible about the pain he caused, but he still believed he did the right thing. They asked if he would tell them where the boys were if they granted parole. He said he could not betray the people who were protecting his sons. The board denied parole. John would stay in prison. Tanya stood up and shouted at him, "Where are they? Just tell me where they are." John looked at her. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Sadness, maybe, or guilt, but he said nothing. Guards escorted Tanya out as she sobbed. The case inspired changes in Michigan law. In 2012, the state passed what became known as the Skelton Brothers Law. It increased penalties for parents who refused to return children during custody disputes. It created special protocols for police when children went missing during custody exchanges. It required faster responses and immediate activation of Amber Alerts. Lawmakers said the bill was necessary to prevent another tragedy like the Skelton case. But Tanya said no law would bring her boys back. No law would make John tell the truth. Age progression images were released in 2020. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children created computer-generated images showing what Andrew, Alexander, and Tanner might look like at ages 19, 17, and 15. The images were distributed nationwide. Tanya posted them on social media. She wrote, "If you are out there, if you see this, please come home. Please let me know you are okay. I love you. I have never stopped loving you." Thousands of people shared the post. Tips came in. A young man in Arizona who looked like the age-progressed image of Andrew. A teenager in Montana who resembled Alexander. None of them were the Skelton boys. Every tip was another false hope, another dead end. Then came the most disturbing development. In 2022, John gave another prison interview. A journalist asked him why he continued to refuse to tell the truth. John leaned close to the camera. His face filled the screen. He said, "I have told the truth. No one wants to hear it. They want me to say I killed my boys. They want me to say I buried them somewhere. But that is not what happened." The journalist asked what did happen then, and John's expression changed. He looked almost peaceful. He said, "I gave them freedom. I gave them a life without pain, without fighting, without a mother who did not deserve them." The journalist asked if that meant they were dead. John shook his head. He said, "Death is not the only way to be free." The interview ended. People who watched it felt physically ill. Death is not the only way to be free. What did that mean? Had John killed them and convinced himself it was mercy? Had he given them to someone who promised a new life but actually killed them? Had he done something worse, something no one had even considered? Psychologists who studied the case said John showed signs of extreme narcissism and delusion. He had rewritten reality in his mind to make himself the hero of the story. He had saved his boys. He had protected them. The fact that no one could find them, the fact that they had vanished without a trace, did not matter to him. In his mind, he had done the right thing. The smell of dead leaves, the sound of wind through empty fields, the sight of 3 empty beds in a house that had been sold and resold, where new families slept in rooms where missing boys once dreamed. The feeling in Morenci that something dark had happened and would never be undone. Every November, the town grew quiet. People stayed inside. They did not talk about the Skelton brothers unless they had to. The case had marked the town forever, a scar that would not heal. Witnesses began recanting or going silent. The neighbor who saw the boys playing on Thanksgiving stopped talking to reporters. The woman who said John asked about hiding children moved away and disconnected her phone. The prisoner who claimed John confessed changed his story, saying maybe he had misunderstood what John told him. It was like the case was eating itself. Every piece of evidence that seemed solid turned soft. Every person who seemed certain grew doubtful, except Tanya. She never wavered. She knew her boys were gone. She knew John had taken them. She just did not know where. And that not knowing was the worst torture of all. Worse than grief. Worse than death. An eternal question mark where her children used to be. The most terrifying fact remained. John Skelton knew exactly what happened to Andrew, Alexander, and Tanner. He knew where they were. He knew if they had suffered. He knew if their last moments were filled with fear, or if he had told them some lie to make it easier. He knew, and he would not say, even after years in prison, even after parole denials, even after the whole world begged him to give those boys' mother peace. He held on to his secret like it was the only power he had left. And maybe it was. In prison, he was nobody, a child killer, hated, forgotten. But as long as he kept the secret, he mattered. People still talked about him. Reporters still interviewed him. Tanya still attended his parole hearings to beg him for answers. The secret kept him alive in a way nothing else could. So he smiled, and he said nothing, and 3 boys remained lost in the dark, wherever dark meant, buried in earth or hidden in plain sight, or scattered to ash or dissolved to nothing. Lost, always lost, forever lost. The case file sits in a cabinet at the Lenawee County Sheriff's Office in Adrian, Michigan. 3 folders, 1 for each boy. Each folder is thick with reports, eyewitness statements, search logs, and dead ends. The case status reads active. It has read active for 14 years. It will read active until someone finds proof of what happened, until someone finds the boys, until John Skelton breaks his silence. None of those things seem likely to happen. John Skelton is currently held at Bellamy Creek Correctional Facility in Ionia, Michigan. He is 54 years old. His prisoner number is 821068. He has been denied parole 3 times. His next parole hearing is scheduled for 2025. He will be 55. Tanya has already said she will attend. She attends every hearing. She will attend every hearing until one of them dies. At the last hearing, in 2022, John told the board he still could not reveal where the boys were because it would put them in danger. The board asked what danger. He would not say. They asked if the boys were alive. He said that was complicated. They denied his parole again. He will serve at least another 3 years, maybe more, maybe the rest of his life if he never tells the truth. Tanya Zuvers is 46 years old now. She never remarried. She still lives in Michigan, about 30 miles from Morenci. She works as a receptionist at a dental office. She keeps the boys' bedroom exactly as it was. 3 beds, toys on the shelves, clothes in the closet. She washes the sheets once a month, even though no one sleeps in them. She says she wants everything ready in case they come home. She knows they will not come home, but she cannot bring herself to pack up their things. On their birthdays, she bakes cakes. She lights candles. She sings happy birthday to an empty room. She posts photos on social media. Andrew would be 23 now. Alexander would be 21. Tanner would be 19. Old enough to have jobs, girlfriends, lives. But they do not. They are frozen at 9 and 7 and 5. Forever children. Forever missing. The house on West Chicago Boulevard has been sold 4 times since 2010. The first family bought it in 2011 for $30,000, half its previous value. They moved out after 8 months. They said they heard sounds at night. Footsteps upstairs, a child's voice. The second family lasted a year. They said the basement felt wrong, cold even in summer. The third family stayed only 6 months. They never said why they left. The current owners moved in 2 years ago. They are a retired couple from Ohio. They know the history. They say the house is fine, just a house. But neighbors have seen lights on in the boys' old bedroom at night when the couple is out of town. No one knows what to make of it. No one wants to ask. Morenci holds a vigil every year on November 26th. It started with 200 people. Now it is down to 30 or 40, mostly family, a few dedicated volunteers, some reporters if it is a significant anniversary. They gather at the park on Main Street. They light candles. Someone plays a recording of the boys' voices from an old home video. Andrew laughing, Alexander singing, Tanner asking for more juice. The recording is 18 seconds long. It is the only video of the boys that still exists. Tanya watches it every day. She says she is afraid she will forget what they sounded like. The investigation technically remains open, but no active searching happens anymore. The last organized search was in 2018. Volunteers walked the same fields they had walked 8 years before. They found nothing new. Police follow up on tips when they come in, but tips are rare now. The case has faded from national attention. Most people have forgotten the names Andrew, Alexander, and Tanner Skelton. The case is filed under Unsolved Disappearances. Cold. Not closed, but cold. Several detectives who worked the case have retired. One of them, Detective Bradley, gave an interview in 2023. He said, "The Skelton case was the one that haunted him most in 30 years of police work." He said, "I have worked murders where we found the body in a day. I have worked cases where we arrested the suspect in an hour. But this one? 3 little boys just gone, erased, and their father sitting there smiling like he knows a joke no one else gets. It eats at you. You go home and you see your own kids and you think about those boys. Where are they? Are they in a field somewhere, bones scattered by animals? Are they in a barrel at the bottom of a lake? Are they in concrete like that prisoner said? We will probably never know, and that is the worst part, not knowing." Other cases have echoed the Skelton disappearance. In 2014, a father in Washington state killed his 2 sons during a custody dispute and then killed himself. In 2018, a mother in California drowned her 3 children and drove off a cliff. In 2021, a father in Texas shot his 4 children and then shot himself. custody battles that end in murder. Parents who decide, if I cannot have them, no one can. The Skelton case fits the pattern, except John did not kill himself. He survived. He went to prison, and he kept the secret. Lawyers and psychologists have studied John's case. They say he shows classic signs of what is called family annihilation, a parent who kills their children to punish the other parent or to maintain control. But family annihilators usually confess or kill themselves. John did neither. He created a fantasy story and stuck to it for 14 years. Some experts think he has convinced himself the story is true, that in his mind, the boys really are alive and safe, that he has rewritten his memories so completely that he no longer knows what is real. Others think he knows exactly what he did and enjoys the power of keeping it secret. Yeah, they say he is a narcissist who feeds on attention. As long as people keep asking about the boys, he matters. The truth would end that, so he will never tell. What we still do not know is simple and terrible. We do not know where Andrew, Alexander, and Tanner Skelton are. We do not know if they died quickly or if they suffered. We do not know if John acted alone or if someone helped him. We do not know if there is any chance, any microscopic possibility that the boys are alive somewhere. We do not know if John will ever tell the truth. We do not know if the truth even matters anymore when the boys have been gone so long that even if they were alive, they would not remember being Andrew, Alexander, and Tanner. They would be different people, strangers. Modern technology has not helped. In 2023, police used ground-penetrating radar to search areas near the Ohio border where the prisoner claimed bodies were buried in concrete. The radar found nothing. Genetic genealogy, the technique used to solve cold cases through DNA, cannot help because there are no bodies to test. Facial recognition software scans millions of faces every day looking for matches to the age-progressed images. No matches found. The boys have vanished as completely as if they never existed. The case asks questions that have no good answers. How does a parent kill their own children? How does someone hide 3 bodies so well that 14 years of searching finds nothing? How does a mother survive not knowing? How does a town move on when something so dark happened in its center? There are no answers, just the questions, repeating forever. Fear is at the heart of this case, not the fear of strangers or random violence, but fear of what lives inside the people we think we know. John Skelton was a Sunday school teacher, a soccer coach, a man who sang in church, and he made 3 children disappear. If he could do it, anyone could. That is the fear. That is what keeps people awake at night. The idea that evil does not announce itself. It does not wear a mask. It looks like a neighbor, a friend, a father reading bedtime stories to his sons before he takes those sons away forever. There is also the question of truth and whether it even exists anymore in this case. John has his truth. The boys are safe. Tanya has her truth. John killed them. The police have their truth. The boys are dead and buried somewhere. But none of these truths can be proven. So maybe there is no truth. I'm just competing stories. Just a void where 3 boys used to be. Human denial plays a role too. For years, people in Morenci wanted to believe John's story because the alternative was too horrible. A father murdering his 3 sons. Who wants to believe that? So they created doubt. Maybe the police got it wrong. Maybe there is an organization. Maybe the boys are alive. Denial is easier than acceptance. But denial does not change reality. It just delays the pain. There are limits to what we can know. Police have searched thousands of acres. They have interviewed hundreds of people. They have used dogs and radar and satellites. They have done everything possible, and they have found nothing. Sometimes the truth stays hidden. Sometimes the missing stay missing. Sometimes the only person who knows the answer takes that answer to the grave. John Skelton will die someday, maybe in prison, maybe as an old man if he is ever paroled. When he dies, the secret dies with him. Andrew, Alexander, and Tanner will remain missing. Tanya will remain in limbo. The case will remain unsolved. That is the most likely ending to this story. No dramatic confession. No discovery of remains. Just silence. Just 3 names on a list of the missing. Just a mother growing old, waiting for children who will never come home. In 2023, a journalist asked John one final question during a prison interview. The journalist said, "When you die, will you tell God where the boys are?" John stared at the camera for a long moment. Then he said, "God already knows." The interview ended. John was led back to his cell. He has not spoken publicly since. Somewhere in Michigan or Ohio, in dirt or water or concrete, 3 boys may rest. Or somewhere in the world, 3 young men may walk past their own missing posters, never knowing their real names. Both possibilities are unbearable. One means death and a secret burial. The other means stolen lives and lost identity. Which is worse? A mother cannot choose. So she exists between the two, hoping and grieving at the same time, forever waiting for an answer that will never come. The Skelton case will never be solved unless John speaks, and John will not speak. So the mystery remains. 3 brothers, 3 empty beds, 3 toy trucks appearing every November, left by unknown hands. A father smiling in prison, a mother crying at home, and silence. Always silence. The kind of silence that screams,